Oh, we had a lot of a lot of humorous things, and most of them I can't talk about. But we we always tried to have a good time, no matter what we were doing. We tried to have a good time. You know, there were a lot of times that weren't good, but when you had the opportunity to have fun, we had fun.
And I'd like to tell you a short story about my graduation ceremony at Fort Rucker. We started with 33, and because they quit sending pilots to Vietnam, we only graduated with 7. They'd get rid of anybody they could for whatever excuse they could get rid. So there was 7 of us graduating, and there were 5 of us that had orders to Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Now, during Vietnam, there was not much hazard to aircraft early on because the only weapons that they could fire on would be their rifles. And so if you flew at 1,500 feet, the bullet would go up and drop. But as they got more sophisticated anti-aircraft missiles and such, they came up with a new tactic called NOE, which is defined as flight as close to the surface of the earth as terrain and vegetation will allow. So we'd come back actually with branches stuck in our skids sometimes. But anyway, so the general's talking and he says, we're developing new tactics where we're flying at night 50 feet off the trees, but we don't have night vision goggles yet. They're being developed. And so we are losing crews and helicopters, crashes, and people are getting killed, but we feel that's an acceptable loss for the needs of the Army. And those of us who had orders in our lap for Fort Campbell, Kentucky, were looking at each other like, acceptable to who? So that was it.
Shower down in the lower stall or lower bay. And it was funny because our Air Force guys that hate this. The Navy guys, we were always up on the top deck. The Air Force guys were down below, and there was a concrete wall about this high that the thing was built on. So they actually had a protection there. But we had nothing up there other than just plywood. At the ends of the barracks, there was a small raise about this high to keep the floodwaters out. Well, that's good, except we had backed up toilets a lot of times. So when it backed up, it kept it inside. So one night, and this is one of my more memorable experiences, about 3 o'clock in the morning, I woke up and it was like, oh God, I gotta go to the bathroom bad. So I went down and it's one of the worst cases of diarrhea I've ever had. So I get down and I flush the toilet and I go to open the door and the door's jammed shut because it's the monsoon and it's swollen shut. I'm like, come on, open up. I hear this gurgle, gurgle, gurgle. I look back and it's like, oh God, everything that I had come out was coming up. And when one comes up, all of them come up. And it comes out of the shower stalls, it comes out of the urinals. It's
So
like,
it's actual. There's plumbing. It was
oh yeah, we had plumbing. We were not on the field, thank God. I'm not a good camper. So I finally broke the door down to get out of there and ran upstairs because I wasn't staying around to clean it up. About a half an hour later, we hear all the Air Force guys screaming and yelling, and it's like, what the hell? So we kind of go down, and I'm good at playing dumb. And it was like, there must have been about this much sewage. And of course, you know how guys are, we're slobs. They had left all their clothes laying on the floor. Well, there's boots, shirts, underwear, all floating around in sewage. So I never told anybody that I did it. About a year later, I met up with an old buddy down in Washington, and we were talking about that. And he said, you know, we want to kill the SOB that did that. And I said, well, guess what? I smiled. He said, it was you? And I said, yeah. He said, we would have cut your off. But it was like, yeah, so. But, you know, you think of the good things like that. I mean, the fun things like that. You don't think of the nights when you get shelled and you're on patrol and you're scared. And
Watching this guy unload a flatbed trailer, and he did one side, and of course all the weight was on the other side, and it fell over and hit the barracks. I had a good time watching that, and the Vietnamese stand around laughing their fannies off at this American soldier that did that.
I developed a knack for speaking English like I was Vietnamese, and often would come back from my one of my missions, and because of how busy that airport was all the time, I'd come back and I'd probably just as often as not I'd be low on fuel coming in, and I'd see, and that traffic pattern was just jammed full of, you know, planes all the way around, and I'd start writing down the tail numbers of them, you know, because they would say, you know, all the and it was mostly cargo planes like C-123s and C-130, well, mostly C-123s because the South Vietnamese had those, or C-7s, and they would fly those. And if I really wanted to get down, if I was worried about running out of gas or something, I'd write the tail numbers down, and I'd get on the radio then and talk to the tower, or just on the tower frequency, and I'd use that voice with that South Vietnamese dialect type of thing, and I would say, okay, Charlie, Juliet, X-ray Tango, you break out a pattern now and re-enter. You know, and all of a sudden I'd see about 3 of them turn out, and I'd slip into the pattern and be able to come in and land ahead of them. Otherwise, I'd have been up there for another half hour, and I didn't know if I had enough gas left to get in.
So I'm on fire guard, and I started smelling smoke, and I went up a couple of floors, and I found the room it was coming from, and there was a guy drunk in his bunk, and the bottom half of his mattress was on fire, and he would sling fireworks into the fire. And all I did was I pulled the mattress out from underneath him, which wasn't so hard because the mattresses we had out there were about that thick. And I dragged it in the latrine, leaving him there, just sitting on the metal webbing there. And he didn't even notice the difference. He was still shooting out fireworks. And I pulled the mattress into the shower and turned turned the water on and got the fire out. And I didn't even report him. So I don't know what happened to him in the morning when they found him with no mattress and a burned mattress in the latrine. But
Well, after we got back from Southeast Asia, I was assigned by my boss to train another individual, and in the Air Force's wisdom, they sent us a guy who, and I look back on it, is he never worked on jet aircrafts. So what does the Air Force do? Sends them to the most sophisticated aircraft they have in the inventory. My boss asked me to train him. In the process of training the individual, we had some small, intricate parts that had to be replaced and or reused, I should say. And after we got done making the repair, I asked this other, he happened to be a sergeant too, where the parts were, and he said he swallowed them, and I couldn't believe what he said. I asked him where the parts were. He said, well, we were busy up and down on the aircraft, and I didn't know what to do with them, so I put them in my mouth, and I accidentally swallowed them. The only thing I can say is it wasn't my fault, and the colonel wasn't happy. But we took some parts off another plane, and it made the mission. That was my most humorous experience in the service, if you want to call it that.